I was an alpha pregnant for a delicate. Episode 3. I did what any logical person would do after learning a word that changed everything. I researched it. That night, alone in my home office, laptop open, every medical journal, every biology text, every obscure designation study I could find. Enigma. The results were thin. Most sources mentioned them the way people mention myths. Footnotes. Theories. Reportedly observed in less than 0.001% of the population. One paper called them a biological anomaly. Another called them an evolutionary outlier. A third used the phrase apex designation and then spent 4 pages explaining why that term was controversial. But the consistent thread across everything I read. They present as other designations, usually omega, rarely detected without specialized testing. Scent suppressants are largely ineffective on them because their natural scent is already suppressed, evolved that way. They can bond with any designation. They are, and I read this particular line 3 times, extraordinarily persuasive in proximity. Those around an enigma often find themselves drawn into compliance without understanding why. I sat back in my chair, thought about Miho stepping back in that elevator, thought about an entire floor of alphas giving a new employee slightly more space without knowing why, thought about myself, looking away first, always looking away first. I closed the laptop, sat in the dark for a while. Park Juno, I thought, what have you done? I came into the office the next morning with a plan. The plan was simple. I was going to be normal, professional, CEO. I was going to treat Park Juno exactly as I had treated him before I knew what he was, which admittedly had already been complicated, and I was going to observe, carefully, without letting him know I was observing. I was going to be completely in control of this situation. I lasted 40 minutes. He brought coffee at 8:40. Not just for me. He brought coffee for the whole team. He did this sometimes. It was one of those things that made everyone in the department quietly adore him. Small gestures, thoughtful, perfectly timed. He set mine on my desk last. Different from the others. Black, no sugar. Exactly how I took it. He turned to leave. Juno. He looked back, patient as always. Those eyes. Sit down, I said. He sat. I looked at him. He looked at me. How long have you known about your designation? I said. The room was very quiet. Something moved across his face. Faster than before. Not quite fast enough. Sir, your designation, I said, evenly. How long have you known? He held my gaze. A long moment. The office outside my glass walls hummed and moved and existed, and in here it was completely still. I don't know what you mean, sir, he said softly. I'm an omega. I looked at him. He looked back. That face. That patience. That absolute composure. I almost admired it. Of course, I said. That will be all. He stood, smoothed his jacket, walked out. I watched him through the glass wall as he returned to his desk. Sat down, picked up his pen. He did not look back. Not once. But I noticed, just barely, the way he set his pen down a little more carefully than usual. The way he was very still for exactly 3 seconds before he started writing. He knew. He knew that I knew. And now we both knew that the other knew. And neither of us was going to say it out loud. Not yet. The game had changed. Miho appeared in my office at lunch. He closed the door, which he only did when it was serious. He sat down across from me, put his phone on my desk. On the screen was an article. Old. Academic. The title contained a word I had spent the previous night reading about. I looked at the article, looked at him. How? I said. I have a contact at Seoul Medical University, he said. I described what I was experiencing around a certain individual, and she sent me this. I said nothing. Jihan. He leaned forward. Is Park Juno an enigma? The word sat between us on my desk like a live thing. I looked at him for a long moment. I don't know, I said. That's not a no. It's not a yes either. Jihan. I'm handling it, Miho. You've been nauseous for 3 weeks and you cried at a... I did not cry. Taehyun told me. I will fire Taehyun. You would never fire Taehyun. He's the best assistant you've ever had and you know it. I stopped. He was right. I would never fire Taehyun. I'm handling it, I said again, quieter. Miho looked at me, really looked at me, the way he had been doing since we were university students, and I was too stubborn to admit when something was bigger than me. Does he know that you know? He said. I was quiet for a moment. Yes, I said. Does he know about? Miho gestured vaguely at me, at my general situation. I don't know, I said. Miho sat back, ran a hand through his hair. This is, he said carefully, a very complicated situation. Thank you, Miho. Truly, your insight is invaluable. I'm being serious. So am I. He looked at me. What are you going to do? I looked at the article on his phone. That word. I don't know yet, I said honestly. That seemed to surprise him. Me admitting I didn't know something. He picked his phone up slowly. I'm here, he said simply. Whatever you need. I nodded. He stood up, started for the door. Miho. He stopped. Don't treat him differently, I said. At the office, nothing changes. He turned and looked at me with an expression I couldn't fully read. Okay, he said. He left. I sat alone. Thought about a boy in a school hallway watching me walk past. Thought about 12 years of patience. Thought about what it meant to plan something that long. To want something that quietly, that completely. I didn't know whether to be unsettled. Or, I shut that thought down immediately. General POV. Daeyeon was not trying to get involved. She wanted to be very clear about that, at least to herself. She was a professional. She had accepted the cracker situation and moved on with her dignity mostly intact. She was done with Seo Jihan and his complete emotional unavailability and his crackers and his... And then she walked into the copy room and found Park Juno standing at the window. Just standing there. Not copying anything. Just looking out. And something about the way he was standing. Very still, very straight. Something in his eyes that was nothing like the soft, pleasant expression she was used to. Made her stop in the doorway. She had never seen him look like that. He looked older somehow. Like the softness had been set down for a moment. Like whatever was usually carefully arranged on his face had been briefly put aside. He looked like someone carrying something heavy. He turned when he heard her. And just like that, soft again. Warm smile. Daeyeon. Sorry, I'll be out of your way. He moved toward the door. She stepped aside. And then, she didn't know why she said it. She wasn't even sure she liked him. But something came out anyway. Are you okay? He stopped. Looked at her. For a moment, just a moment, that softness flickered. I'm fine, he said. Thank you for asking. He left. Daeyeon stood in the copy room for a while. Thought about that flicker. Thought about the way Jihan had been looking at Juno lately. Not the way a CEO looked at an employee. The way a person looked at something they were trying to understand before it was too late. She pressed the copy button. Watched the machine work. Something is happening in this office, she thought. And nobody is telling me anything. Back to Jihan. I started noticing the smaller things. Now that I was watching, really watching, I noticed the things I had dismissed before. The way Juno always positioned himself where he could see the elevator. Where he could see me coming before I arrived on the floor. The way he tracked movement in a room without appearing to. Eyes forward but aware of everything. The way he ate lunch alone sometimes, by the window, and got very still and far away for exactly 20 minutes before coming back to himself. The way he touched things carefully, like he was always conscious of the weight of his own hands. I noticed these things. And then I noticed something else. He was tired. Not visibly. Not in a way anyone else would catch. But I had been watching him for weeks with the focus of a man who was trying to solve a problem, and I could see it now. Something was costing him. I didn't know what. I told myself it wasn't my concern. It became my concern on a Thursday evening. I was leaving late. The floor was empty. I was walking to the elevator when I passed the small kitchen area and saw him. He was sitting at the small table in the corner. Not eating. not on his phone, just sitting with both hands wrapped around a cup of tea that had gone cold, staring at nothing. He looked young, not soft, not careful, not the Park Juno who moved through this office like everything was under control. Just young, and tired, and for one unguarded moment, alone. I stopped in the doorway. He didn't hear me. That was how I knew he was genuinely exhausted. His awareness had slipped. I stood there longer than I should have. Then I walked to the kettle, filled it, switched it on. He heard that. He looked up fast, composed immediately, that face clicking back into place like a door closing. "Sir, I didn't hear you." "Clearly," I said. I got a fresh cup, put a tea bag in, waited for the kettle. He watched me, cautious for the first time. The kettle boiled. I poured, set the cup in front of him, took the cold one away. He looked at the cup, then up at me. I leaned against the counter, looked back at him. "You don't have to perform," I said. "There's no one here." Something moved across his face. Not the flicker I had seen before. Something slower, deeper. He looked back down at the tea. "I don't know what you mean, sir," he said, quietly. "Yes, you do," I said. The kitchen was very still. He didn't answer. But he didn't reach for the soft face either. He just sat there, hands around the new cup, looking at the table. And for the first time since he had walked into my building, he looked real. I pushed off the counter. "Go home, Juno," I said. "Get some rest." I walked to the elevator. He didn't say anything. But just before the doors closed, I heard it. Very quiet, almost not there. "Thank you." "Not thank you, sir. Just thank you." I stood in the elevator, listened to the doors close, and felt something shift in my chest that I was absolutely not ready to examine. General POV final scene. Juno sat in that kitchen for a long time after the elevator doors closed. Both hands around the cup Jihan had made. He had not expected that. In 12 years of planning and watching and waiting, he had built a very complete picture of Seo Jihan. Cold, controlled, observant, efficient, difficult to reach and impossible to surprise. He had not built in the possibility of Jihan making him tea, of Jihan standing in a doorway and seeing. Not the Omega performance, not the careful employee, not the pieces Juno arranged for other people to find, but the tired part, the part he showed no one. He looked down at the cup. "You don't have to perform. There's no one here." He closed his eyes for a moment. This was not how it was supposed to go. He was supposed to be in control of this. He was supposed to be the one who decided when walls came down and which ones and how much. He was 12 years ahead of Jihan in this story. He was not supposed to be the one caught off guard. He opened his eyes, looked at his phone, thought about calling Sujin, didn't, stood up, washed both cups carefully, dried them, put them back exactly where they belonged, turned off the kitchen light, stood in the dark for just a moment. He made me tea, he thought, like it was a problem, like it was something that needed to be solved. Then he picked up his bag and walked to the elevator and pressed the button for the lobby and stood in that small moving box going down through a building that had started to feel, against all of his careful planning, like somewhere he belonged. That was new. That was dangerous. That was... The elevator doors opened. Juno stepped out into the lobby, walked through the glass doors, into the cold soul night, and for the first time in 12 years of certainty, he had absolutely no idea what came next.